Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It's good to have you here. We have a guest, so why don't you introduce yourself to us?
My name is Bob Shell. I'm actually from Atlanta, Georgia, but we moved down here about 15, 20 years ago and love it. We remember the Havath Achim Synagogue up in Atlanta, um, which is a conservative synagogue. And although I've been here 15 years, we actually went to Colorado for about 8 and just recently came back a few years ago. So glad to be back in South Florida and
Nice.
looking forward to this educational opportunity.
Welcome. Good to
Thank
have
you.
Hi, Bob. I'm Lenore Livingston. I live here in town
Oh, great.
and I've been a member here 7 years, 6 years.
Okay. Nice to meet you.
A long time. All right. So, I apologize we had to skip last week, but thank you for understanding. So we're gonna squish the last two sessions into one, because if my counting is correct, today was the last of the, yes, okay. So we spent a bulk of the first two sessions trying to get a handle on what is the soul, because we can't really understand what happens when we die until we understand what it means to be alive. So we talked a lot about body and soul, the interaction of the two. We imagined a little bit about what might happen with the soul right after a person dies. We talked about the different levels of soul, how it's possible perhaps that that souls continue to experience the pain of the decay of the body during that first year after death. Not physical pain, but by watching the decay of the body, that's sort of a spiritual pain. But today we're going to really jump into the myriad of beliefs that Jews have about what happens after we die. And in order to do that, we have to just appreciate the historical context of why this whole question even came up. So I want to invite you to turn to page 6 in these packets. If you're watching online, you can, or watching later, you can download these at temple.davidfl.org/die. So page 6, the first text at the top says Isaiah 64:3, but we're going to actually read the first text from Rabbi Or Rose. And he's going to really set the stage for us as to where all of these, what historical events brought about all of these different beliefs that we have. So would you like to read for us?
Sure. The development of the concept of life after death is related to the development of eschatology, speculation about the end of days in Judaism. Beginning in the period following the destruction of the first temple in Jerusalem, 586 BCE, several of the classical Israelite prophets, Amos, Hosea, and Isaiah, began forecasting a better future for their people. However, with repeated military defeats and episodes of exile and dislocation, culminating in the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE, Jewish thinkers began to lose hope in any immediate change, instead investing greater expectations in a messianic future and in life after death. This was coupled with the introduction into Judaism of Hellenistic notions of the division of the material, perishable body and the spiritual, eternal soul.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So in 70 CE, right, we have the destruction of the temple, and the Jews are just down and out and depressed. And the thinkers of that time say, we need to re-envision what reward looks like, what punishment looks like. We cannot live in a world in which the punishments that happen to us are the end. Right? That if we suffer in life, if we get cancer in life, if our temple is destroyed in life, we cannot live in a world, these thinkers said, in which that's the end. We have to imagine a world beyond this world in which the rights and the wrongs are corrected, so to speak, right? So the wrongs that are done to the righteous are corrected in the world to come, and the rights that are done to the evil are corrected in the world to come. And so all of this is coming out of this desperation to understand the meaning of destruction and sorrow and mourning. I mean, this is coming out of a time when people just were lost and they didn't know what, and they needed to believe in something. They needed to believe in something. Hello, welcome. No. Okay, so that's where the idea of the world to come and some of the other things that we're going to talk about. So we're going to start with the world to come. Okay? That's the Olam Haba. That's the first big idea. So Aryeh Kaplan. Lenore, would you like to read about Aryeh Kaplan for us?
Sure. Some authorities maintain that what the sages called Olam Haba, the future world, or a world to come, refers to the spiritual dimension that the soul enters after leaving the body. The majority, however, consider Olam Haba as a completely new stage of earth life, which will be ushered in only after the Messianic age and the resurrection of the dead. According to these authorities, all souls pass into an intermediate dimension called Olam HaNeshamot, world of the soul, after death. It is there that they are judged and then abide until the resurrection and the judgment.
Good. So there's a lot in here. So basically, he says there are two ideas about this world to come. One idea is that it is a dimension that exists right away after somebody dies. Their soul immediately goes into Olam Haba, the world to come. Other, and this is really the more prominent belief, is that Olam Haba is some distant, not yet here place that that all of us will inhabit, body and soul, in some future day after the Messiah comes. More recently, some of the really kind of funky, cool mystics, some Reb Nachman of Breslov people from the, I think it was 18th century, 19th century, they've noticed that the words Olam Haba, the world to come, doesn't really mean the world to come. It actually means the world that is coming. It's an active verb, right? When someone walks in the door, in Hebrew, say Baruch Haba, Baruch Haba. This is Olam Haba. Well, if someone is walking in the door, I'm not going to say, welcome to the person who is coming in the future. No, I'm saying welcome because you're walking in the door right now. So Olam Haba can also mean the world that exists right now. And if we think of it that way, we could perhaps understand that Olam Haba is here, right now. The world to come exists, but we can't experience it yet in our earthly bodies. Maybe we are somehow restricted from it, or perhaps it's hidden from us because of the hatred and the anger and the desperation that fills the world. So it's either here now, or it's waiting for us after we die, or it's somewhere down the road after the Messiah comes, right? Lots of different beliefs about the world to come.
Excuse me.
Please.
Does Olam mean world, or does that have several meanings?
So Olam means two things. Olam means world, physical world. It also can mean forever, like le'olam va'ed.
Yeah.
So, but it's both spatial and temporal.
Okay.
Okay. And a quick one from Pirkei Avot. This is a nice one. Rabbi Yaakov taught this world is compared to an antechamber that leads to Olam Haba. So now we have this idea that this world that we're in, this isn't the real world. This is just preparing us for the world to come. Right? This isn't it. We feel like this is it, but this isn't it. This is just preparation for the world to come.
Are you saying that our souls are going to live on? This is one of the things that I wrestle with.
So a basic tenet, so this is some of the stuff we did before, but a basic tenet of Judaism is that the soul is eternal. The soul never dies.
So what happens to it? Is it go to somebody else's vessel, the body?
So that's reincarnation, and we haven't gotten there yet, but we have that.
Sorry.
No, we have that. Right now, all that we know is that when a person died, we don't know anything. I didn't mean to say all we know. What we believe, what we're taught, is that when a person dies, their soul is separated from their body, that there seem to still be some points of connection between the soul and the body. We know that the soul is in some sort of waiting place. It's in some sort of holding area, maybe. I think a couple weeks ago we looked at the idea of purgatory, that every soul goes to this sort of waiting place where it's judged. There's a sense that every soul is judged after a person dies, and this is why. Let me back up. Okay, so I want to make sure I'm not jumping ahead of myself. We'll just do it. So every soul is judged. There are three types of people in the world, right? There are tzaddikim, purely righteous people, rishaim, purely wicked people, and beinonim, all the in-betweeners. We're all beinonim, right?
Right.
If you're a tzaddik, if you're a purely righteous person, you go right to heaven. If you're a rasha, if you're a purely wicked person, you go right to hell. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. Just go. If you're a beinonim, if you're one of us, then you go to this purgatory place. Excuse me. And you're there for 12 months. And in this place is when your soul does some repair work. It repairs itself. It's not necessarily punished. I know that purgatory has connotations of punishment, but that's not what this is. Right? This is really a place of repair. Although we have lots of different images of purgatory. And then after 12 months, presumably, all of those souls ascend to heaven because they all repaired themselves.
And who's made the judgment, whether they're tzaddikim, whether they're
God.
just like the rest of us?
God. That's all God.
It's interesting that it's a temporal 12 months, our 12 months. And that corresponds to one of the mourning periods, doesn't it?
Well, yes and no. So think about, so what's so there are three mourning periods, right? There's more, but Shiva, Shloshim, and then what's the last one?
I don't know the name, but
It's
that's-
not a
11
year.
months. It's 11 months.
It's
and a
11
day.
months,
And a
yeah.
day, right.
So that's intentional though, right? So why is it 11 months? Why do we say Kaddish for only 11 months and not a full year? Because we assume that our loved ones are all tzaddikim. And they all went right to heaven. We don't even want to associate them with 12 months, which is what Beinonim require. And so we cut off Kaddish at 11 months so that we don't make the association between our loved ones and having to be in purgatory for 12 months. That's why it's only 11 months, yeah.
Interesting.
Okay, let's see. Oh my goodness. Okay, here we go. Next page, page 7. So now we're going to get into some what some of the rabbis they had experiences that let them imagine what it might be like after we die. So let's read. This is from the Talmud. Nina, would you like to read this one?
Sure.
Rabbi Eliezer.
Rabbi Eliezer said, "The souls of the righteous are hidden under the thorn of glory."
Throne. It's a good thing, not a thorn.
Did I say thorn?
I heard thorn.
Oh.
I could be wrong. I'm sorry.
Throne of glory, as it is said, "Yet the soul of thine Lord shall be bound up in the bundle of life." But those of the wicked continue to be imprisoned, while one angel stands at one end of the world and a second stands at the other end, and they sling their souls to each other. For it is said, "And the souls of thine enemies, them shall he sling out as from the hollow of a sling."
Okay, so hold on a second. So far, according to this, the righteous sit right under the throne of glory. Right? There's no better place to be. One of my favorite lines is Shivita Adonai lenegdi tamid. Just all I want, God. Right? Achat shalti. I just want one thing. Just let me sit by you. I just want to sit at your, at your feet. Right? So the idea that the purely righteous just get to sit by God's feet, but the purely wicked, there's an angel at each end of the earth, and apparently they're playing tennis with our souls, right? Slinging us back and forth. Slinging those souls back and forth. And that's based on this biblical verse here, right? So now it's going to talk about what happens to the rest of us.
Rabbah asked Rabbi
Nachman.
Nachman, "What about those who are intermediate?" Had I died, I could not have told you this, he replied. Thus did Samuel say, both these and those, the wicked and the intermediate, are delivered to Duma, the guardian angel of the deceased. These enjoy rest, whereas the others have no rest. Rabbi Mari said, even the righteous are fated to be dust, for it is written, and the dust returned to the earth as it was.
Okay. So it's a little unclear on what happens to the people in the middle. It seems that they separate out, the purely righteous seem to be separated out until the very end, and then Rav Mari says, now they get returned to the dust also. But that the intermediate and the wicked end up in the same place, but the intermediate somehow find rest in this
Okay,
place.
if the soul returns to the dust, then it's no longer viable to go on forever. Is that a true statement, would you say?
Yes, but it doesn't say the soul returns to the dust. It says the righteous.
What
What
is the difference?
The body returns to the dust.
Okay, so I have to think that one through. The body, okay.
Right, so the body returns to the earth,
Right,
the soul returns to God, is what I might say.
I can
Okay.
have that.
Okay. Okay, so these two little things, two little insights as to what happened. Apparently somebody dies and then they come back to life, right? And of course, what's the first thing you ask? You say, so, no? What's it like over there? So Rabbi Joseph, the son of Rabbi Joshua ben Levi, who dies and returns back to life, his father asked him, what did you see? He replied, I beheld a world the reverse of this one. Those who are on top here were below there, and vice versa. He, Yoshua ben Levi, said to him, my son, you have seen a corrected world. Interesting. So the world to come, according to him, is almost an inverse of this world. And I think what he means there is that the righteous actually are rewarded. The wicked actually are punished. I think that's what he's getting at there. And then for Midrash Ruth, Rav Maisha, the grandson of Rav Yeshua, was unconscious for 3 days in his sickbed. After the 3 days, he regained consciousness. His father said to him, where were you? He answered, I was in a mixed world. He said to him, what did you see there? To which he replied, I saw there in disgrace many men who are held here in honor.
That's
I'm confused. But
Many men here who are held in honor after this world are held in disgrace.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I don't get the sense of that.
Things are seldom what they seem.
That's right.
And perhaps it's also a commentary on what we value.
Like Bernie Madoff.
What we allow to happen also.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he got it here, too.
Yeah.
Wow, that's quite a statement.
Okay, shall we go to hell? Let's go to
Well, it's
hell.
gonna be reversed.
Who would like to read about Gehinnom, Hell, by Rabbi Or Rose?
I'll read it.
Please.
Rabbi or Rose. Only true righteous souls ascend directly to Gan Eden, say the sages.
Gan Eden is the Garden of Eden, but it's also another word for the world to come, or heaven, if you will.
The average person descends to a place of punishment and or purification, generally referred to as Gehinnom. The name is taken from a valley, Gehinnom, just south of Jerusalem, once used for child sacrifice by the pagan nations of Canaan, 2 Kings 23. Some view Gehinnom as a place of torture and punishment, fire and brimstone. Others imagine it less harshly, as a place where one reviews the actions of his or her life and repents for past misdeeds. The soul's sentence in Gehinnom is usually limited to a 12-month period of purgation before it takes place in Olam Haba.
before it takes its place in Olam Haba.
Mishnah.
You don't have to read the citations.
Okay. The 12 months limit is reflected in the year-long mourning cycle and the recitation of the Kaddish. Only the utterly wicked do not ascend to Gan Eden at the end of the year. Sources differ on what happens to these souls at the end of their initial time of purgation. Some say that the wicked are utterly destroyed and cease to exist, while others believe in eternal damnation from Maimonides.
Okay. Does that make sense? That make anyone feel okay about?
Well, if all souls are eternal, then how can they be utterly destroyed?
That's a very good question. Right. If the very idea of a soul is, well, right, if the very idea of a soul is that it's eternal, then how can God destroy those souls? Right. Yeah. I'm a little uncomfortable with the idea that assuming that I am one of those intermediaries, I'm a little uncomfortable with the idea that I'm going to have to hang out for 12 months with all the bad boys too. I kind of wish there was a separate place for me.
Yeah, but if you were brought up with good values, then you have no problem.
That's interesting.
Hanging out with all those bad people,
Maybe they don't think they're so bad either.
that's part of the problem. I think you're right. Yeah.
So if the belief is God is perfect and God is loving, why would there even be a hell? Why would he have developed?
Because we're not. We're not perfect. That's why we need a hell. Because our souls need perfecting, or punishment. I think God creating a hell is less a reflection of God's perfection and much more a reflection of our imperfection. I think.
Somewhere I read that when bad things happen to us today, we are repenting for something that happened, something bad we did in another life.
Right. So we have that. We definitely have that. And we'll get to that. That's reincarnation also. That argument got a lot of traction, it must be 10 years ago now. I don't remember exactly when, it was a long time ago, when one of the chief rabbis of Israel, I don't even remember the context, but he said that victims of the Holocaust were not being punished for their own sins. They were being punished for the sins of earlier incarnations of their souls. So that is to say that the people who died had been reincarnated and that those souls still had to be punished from prior mistakes.
What a horrible thought.
Yeah. Oh, well, he got a lot of heat for it. Yes.
Yeah, that's a lot to carry,
Yeah.
Isn't that almost a Christian notion of somebody else dying for your sins?
No, it's not somebody else.
No, it's you.
It's because it's the same soul. It's just a different body.
I know.
Yeah. So look, I don't like that either.
No.
I will say that I think I believe in reincarnation. I'll tell you a quick story. So Ayelet, it must have been Ayelet. When Ayelet was born, yeah, it had to have been Ayelet. So I was at Beth Israel Hospital, and Ayelet was being born, and I had been meeting with and working with a family for a couple of months up until then, with a young girl named Chava, who was 14 years old, who was dying of cancer. And you know Debbie Friedman? Any of you ever heard Debbie Friedman?
Yeah.
So Chava used to, forgive me, I just have to fill up my thing. Chava used to, during her chemo treatments, used to sing Debbie Friedman songs. And so one week we brought Debbie in, and Debbie and I went over to Chava's house, and we sang those songs to
Oh,
her. And
nice.
so I had a very special connection with this family. So in any case, I'm in the hospital and Ayelet is born, and I'm standing in the hallway about 20 minutes after she's born, looking at her on the phone with the father with Chava's dad, who's looking at his daughter who had just died.
Oh,
Right? There was just this surreal moment of death and birth, and somehow connectivity between the two. You know, do I actually think that Chava is in Ayelet? I have no idea, but I couldn't help but feel that there was something going on there. And certainly, you know, we see our loved ones in other people, in family members. So do we have to be very, very literal when we say that a person is really reincarnated completely into a new being? Maybe not. But I think there are certainly ideas of reincarnation that live on. The idea, though, behind reincarnation, and we're really jumping ahead, but that's okay, is that our souls, our job, not our job, the job of a soul is to perfect itself. That's why it's here. And it can't do that in one lifetime. One lifetime is too short. And so it does what it can. And then when the body dies, it comes back and it keeps working. A quick story, when Liat died, we were sitting Shiva, and I had a very Orthodox friend who came down. I'll never forget this. We were sitting in the basement, and he told me this story. It's totally inappropriate. You should never say this, by the way, to anyone when they're mourning, but in hindsight, I really appreciated it. So he said that there's a story of a king and a queen who wanted nothing more than to have a child. And they prayed and they prayed and they prayed and finally they were blessed with a child. They were so happy. And they just took the best care of the child. They hired a wet nurse to take care of the baby because, you know, they were the king and the queen. They were so busy. And then as it grew up, they loved it and they took care of it and they taught it how to be a good person. This little prince or princess, whatever, grew up into just the most wonderful person in the world. Generous, loving, okay. Lived a long life. Parallel to that, there's a poor family that had been really wanting a child. They begged and they prayed, they begged and they prayed. Finally, they were granted a child. And they were beside themselves with joy. And they could not leave this child's side. They just held it, and the thought of having a wet nurse, not only could they not afford it, but they would never even dream of it. And after 2 years, as soon as the child was weaned, it died. And they went to the rabbi. They said, what is this? What is this? We loved this child. We did everything for it. And the rabbi said, I want to tell you a story about a prince. This prince was born to a king and a queen who loved it so deeply and who gave it everything that it needed, that its soul was almost perfected, but it was lacking one thing. It was lacking being raised by its mother and father for the first 2 years of its life. That soul is your child's soul. You have completed your child's soul.
oh,
And they were ready to go. They were ready to go. They were done.
that's Kushner.
They were
Isn't it
completed.
In the book.
It may be, yeah. It's not Kushner, but he got it. But
That says-
right? So the idea that every soul has certain things that it has to do. Forgive me, that it has to accomplish. And that perhaps there is a time when it's done. It's done what it needed to do.
Oh.
Yeah,
So once it's done, is it like a Hindu nirvana? Doesn't have to come back anymore?
it doesn't have to come back anymore, right?
Hmm.
Okay, let's keep going. Let's look at let's go down to resurrection. Let's do resurrection. Oh no, I'm sorry. We'll do one above resurrection. Page 8. This is nice. So from Brachot. So what does the future world look like? Right? Either whether it's heaven or whether it's this purgatory. What is this? Wherever we go next, what does it look like? Who would like to read for me?
I'll read it.
Please, a favorite saying.
A favorite saying of Rav was, the future world is not like this world. In the future world, there is no eating, nor drinking, nor propagation, nor business, nor jealousy, nor hatred, nor competition. But the righteous sit with their crowns on their heads, feasting on the brightness of the divine presence, as it says, and they beheld God and did eat and drink.
So, so what they're saying here is that what did they eat and drink? They didn't eat and drink food. They ate and drank the divine.
It's a metaphor.
Right, the divine presence. There's another teaching that says that from Reb Nachman that says that let me see if I can get this right. The mitzvot that we do in this world, the commandments that we fulfill, the good deeds that we do, are the food that we eat in the next world.
Oh.
And the prayers that we say in this world are what we drink in the next world.
Mm-hmm.
So the more you pray and do good deeds, the more you'll be full and satisfied in the next world. Have you heard the story of the? Okay, one more quick story, and then we'll finish up. There's a story, and you'll have to forgive me, I don't remember where it's from, I'm sorry, that somebody wanted to see heaven and hell, and so God said, sure, come with me. And so first they went into heaven, and they walked through the door, and there was a long table, just forever, with people sitting around it, and it was covered in food. And everyone looked happy, and just, it was fantastic, beautiful. Then they went to hell. They went into another room, long table, everyone's sitting around it, tons of food on the table, but everyone looked miserable. Everyone was miserable. And they noticed in both places that the people, the spoons that they had were too long. Like they were really, really long. So they couldn't get the food into their mouth. So the guy said, so I don't get it. What's the difference? And God said, in heaven, they learn to feed each other across the table.
Mm-hmm.
In hell, they spent all day trying to get it in their own mouth, but they couldn't because the spoon was too long. And so they were just wasting away.
That's a good story.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yes.
I love
Yes.
that. Just
It
beautiful.
really is.
Yeah, it's very famous. I certainly didn't make it up. Yeah. Beautiful story, right? In heaven, we figure out how to actually take care of each other.
It's
Yeah.
very nice.
Yeah. Okay, resurrection. So what is resurrection? So let's start with these are some biblical verses on resurrection. Would you like to read?
Ezekiel. Then he said unto me, Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. Behold, they say, our bones are dried up, and our hope is lost. We are clean cut off. Therefore prophesy, and say unto them, Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I will open your graves, and cause you to come up out of your graves, O my people, and I will bring you into the land of Israel.
Great. So
It's
this
got to
is
be that Negro spiritual, the bones will
yeah.
rise up. Yeah.
So that comes from this story. This is a story of Ezekiel. It's the story of the valley of the dry bones, and he sees this valley of dry bones, and then God is able to put sinew back on the bones and raise everyone from the dead. Right? Resurrection, and we, by the way, this is a very prominent belief in Judaism. We pray for the resurrection of the dead 3 times every day. In the Amidah, when we say Baruch Atah Adonai Mechayeh HaMeitim, Mechayeh means bring life, Meitim means to the dead. When they wrote that prayer, they weren't saying, oh, give spiritual life to people who are depressed. I mean, they weren't thinking all of the fun ways that we're able to parse it today. They literally meant bring people who are dead to life. That is a prayer for the resurrection. Now, resurrection doesn't happen every other Tuesday at 3 o'clock. There is a point in time, right? After the Messiah comes, we'll be resurrected, and we'll all go into the world to come. That's why, if you've ever seen in Jerusalem, the Mount of Olives, Har Eitzim, which is right across from the Dung Gate. So the rumor is that when the Messiah comes, he's going to go in through the Dung Gate of Jerusalem. And so the cemetery, this huge cemetery, is right outside of the Dung Gate in Jerusalem. And people get buried there because it's first come, first serve. I mean, it's best seating for the arrival of the Messiah. They get buried there so they can be first in line when the Messiah comes to enter back into Jerusalem. And there's a nasty rumor that the 777, not the Lubavitchers, what in New York, there's a, you know what I'm talking about? It's 77, it's like an address, 777 or 747 or, they have a wine even, I don't know. I think it's the Lubavitchers, that they carry around pagers and they have a 747 on call at all time. And that as soon as word goes out that the Messiah is coming, they all get on the 747, fly over to Israel, and get in line at the Dung Gate. It's the nasty rumor. I don't know if it's actually true. But
So what if you get cremated? You're in big trouble.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of the reasons we don't believe in cremation. Now, nowadays, the truth of the matter is that I think very few people buy into this kind of a resurrection. And what we believe is that every soul has the capacity. It has nothing to do with how you die or how you're buried or cremated or not, but that every soul not only has the capacity for resurrection, but has the requirement of resurrection. That there are dead parts in our souls that can be resurrected if we give them the attention, if we give them the love, if we give them the help and the support that they need.
I have a question. When I was up north, I pre-planned a funeral.
Mhm.
And one of the questions I was asked is, did I want to be cremated? Now, this was in Levine's chapel. I'm
Yeah.
sure you're familiar with that. I was horrified. And
Yeah.
I said, excuse me. I said, but Jewish people do not believe in cremation. He said, well, we kind of do that now, they do. So
A lot of people do.
yeah, so now
Yes.
thinking like forward, I was listening to, hearing what you're saying, absorbing what you said. If the soul leaves the body when you're dead and you're left with the vessel,
Right,
what's the harm? What's the harm in
right.
cremating it?
Well, I'm not sure that I would use harm as the right word. Look,
Okay.
so number one,
Rationale.
if you believe in a real reincarnation, then by cremating your body, you're exempting yourself from that, I guess. Okay. But the more important argument against cremation, for me at least, is the idea that our body is not our body to destroy. It's not our body. It's on loan to us. It's on loan to us from God, and we have a responsibility to return it as much as we can in the state that we received it.
Dust.
No, we return it. No, well, yes. I mean, ultimately, yes. Ultimately, yes. Dust. I was thinking we return it whole, and then nature takes its course and it becomes dust.
Okay.
But yes.
I hate to bring this up, but money enters in right there with the
True.
burial.
It's true.
Yep.
It's a big deal.
Yep, you're right.
I didn't believe it until I heard people talking.
No, you're right. You're right. Let's look at the Daniel text. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to reproaches and everlasting abhorrence. So now we have reward and punishment, right? So you die now all of a sudden in the book of the prophet Daniel, you die, and then when resurrection happens, those who deserve a life of joy and whatever, those who deserve reward will get it, and those who deserve punishment, you're getting it too.
How are you defining resurrection? Because the word always bothers me, because I think we talked about this one week, that does it really mean going up, and why do we envision God on high?
No, resurrection means us coming back to life.
But it's the upward, the thought of upward, when you think resurrect, going up.
No, I think it's God. Well, I think it's going up, but I think it's going up out of the earth. I don't think it's going up to God.
Pretty crowded on the earth if everybody.
Say again?
It would be pretty crowded here if everybody got ready.
Not if there are a limited number of souls.
Okay, that's right.
But here's the other thing about that. You have to remember, we're talking about God, right? If God needs more room,
There'll be more.
God will figure it out. You know, it's we can't get kind of stuck in the scientific dilemmas of how is everyone going to fit, because we are well beyond science in this discussion. Right? All right, one more, and this is one of the very few references we have to reincarnation. And this will probably sound familiar to what I said before. Sefer Bahir. Would someone like to read this for us? Please, Nina. Last page.
Why do things go well for an evildoer and badly for a righteous man? Because the righteous man was already once in the past an evildoer, and he is now being punished. But does one punish a person for wrongs committed in the days of his youth? I do not speak of the same life. I speak of the fact that he was already there in the past. His companions said to him, "How long will you still speak obscure words?"
So apparently the author of Sefer Bahir, his friends thought he was a little crazy also. Right? But here we go. Right? So we have reincarnation, we have resurrection, we have heaven, we have hell, we have purgatory, we have the eternity of the soul, we have the idea that souls can communicate and perhaps even influence what happens here on earth. We saw that a couple of weeks ago. We have a lot of different beliefs about what happens after you die. Many of them born very real struggle that and the sages were dealing with when bad stuff was happening in their lives, when they couldn't understand how such terrible, painful things could happen. And so they had to come up with beliefs, with understandings, with teachings that would somehow give us some peace and comfort. The idea that this isn't the end of this world. There's a beautiful story about, I won't have time to tell you the whole story, but how this, it takes 9 months to build a body, but it takes 90 years to build a soul, right? And so you think about birth into this life, that's the birth of the body. Death is the birth of the soul. It's not an end, it's a new beginning, it's a new birth. And the eternity of the soul. So I would recommend, if you're interested in any of this stuff, one of the best books, I think, is called The Death of Death. It's a wonderful book. Neil Gilman, I believe, is the author. And he talks about how Judaism essentially argues for how the world to come is going to kill death. Death no longer exists, and we do away with it. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. My favorite part of the whole book is actually the last chapter, where he stops citing everyone else and he starts talking very personally about what he believes. That's very powerful to me. So I want to encourage you all to